Hi, HR Nation. Welcome to the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, we're joined by John Tomasello. Hopefully I said that right, John. Your last name. Who's the Vice President and Head of HR Communications at Leo Pharma US. John, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Chris. Great to be here.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad we made this happen. We saw each other a few weeks ago in New Jersey, and now here we are. So thanks for saying yes to coming on the shows. And thanks for joining us at Johnson & Johnson. It was really great to meet you, and I hope you had a good time.
Appreciate you and Shane hosting that.
Well, look, before we jump in, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself personally and your sort of journey to where we are today, because I actually love your journey. Very unique. So tell us a bit more about that and how you ended up here.
So career HR person based in the New York metro area, born and raised in the New York metro area. Been in HR now for almost 25 years. Started off in HR on day one, with the commitment that in order to be a good HR person, have to understand the business. Mm-hmm. Have to understand the business. And the way that it worked for me as a teenager, I started working in a supermarket, sort of like a Tesco in the UK, mm-hmm. High volume supermarket based in the New York metro area. I did every job in the store, from the clerk to the stock person to the butcher area to everything you can think of in a supermarket. And I did that job through my teen years, through university. And when I graduated from university as a marketing major of all things, the owner of the chain of stores approached me and asked what I was going to do. And I told him I'm going to go into marketing, and I had some opportunities lined up in the city. And he asked me if I'd be interested in being his HR manager for a store that he was opening, in a brand new store in the New York metro area, 300 employees, another high volume store. And I said, HR, I was a class I took at university, and I thought, and I asked him, I don't know. I never thought about it. Why would I do that?
By the way, for context, you worked all that time to pay your way through university, right?
Yeah, I had help. I had family help. But yes, fundamentally, I needed that job in order to get me through, pay bills and get me through university. Yes.
Now all of a sudden, the HR role's on the table.
Yeah. HR roles on the table, and then of course I'm thinking, can I make money at this?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. That's why I'm asking, right? Because you're probably thinking, wait a minute, I've been working towards this the entire time for so many years, and now this HR role's popped up.
Right. I want to be the head of marketing somewhere, and not even knowing what that really meant at the time in my 20s. But he came with this idea, and I said to him, I remember saying, why would I go into HR? And it was this crossroads moment for me. It was the way he explained it. He looked at me and he said, John, what do you think HR does? The best HR people understand the operation. What better person to hire people, to train people, to work with the unions? He said, you were in the union. What better person to do all this than somebody who understands the operation well enough, because they've done all the jobs? He said, you're perfect for it. He said, you've managed people in my stores. You know how to run my operation. I want you to really consider this. And it was the sort of light bulb moment. I went home and I thought about it, and it was really the interesting perspective to say, well, this is actually running a business.
Yeah.
And partnering me up with the store manager in a lot of ways is a similar job to what I'm doing today. Stakes are higher, certainly a large organization, all that stuff. But it's essentially at its core the same job. Understand the business, work with the person running it, and make it more effective. Mm-hmm. It's all right there. And that was in my 20s. Never looked back. So happy I did it. And it was apparently a calling for me.
Yeah, I love it. And this is really the theme of today's episode for everyone listening, of really understand what does it mean to really understand the business. People keep saying it, as a HR professional, you need to understand the business, but I think there's different levels to really understand the business. And I want to start by, sharing some of your own stories, John, that you shared with me last time we which is one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on the show and share this, because I think your stories really define what it truly means to understand your business. So if you could share, you know what stories I'm referring to. So
Yeah.
if you could jump in and share it, I think it's so
Sure.
fascinating and really interesting.
Of course, I left that role understanding retail, and I continued to move on through different companies, whether it was an FMCG or whether it was healthcare and different components of healthcare, pharma, biologics, biotech. And as I changed roles, it continued to be the same principle. Understand the business. And understanding the business to me always begins with the end user. And the end user, if it's a healthcare, it's the patient. If it's FMCG, it's a product, whether it's Pepsi or whatever product the company is. And I didn't work at Pepsi, but you get the concept. It's the end user product. Understand how that product is created, it's made, and it's sold. And everything else really falls into place. Now, I say this before I go into some examples. You have to know HR. I spent a lot of time as an HR practitioner learning the specialty areas of HR. This wasn't only for me through my career about doing everything the business wants or leaning completely into the business, because that's not healthy. I understand talent management. I understand the principles, but it's how you apply it. Yeah. So I would always do this through the lens of my HR theory knowledge. And I have a master's in HR. I earned that, years ago, to make sure that I was up on my practice. So some examples of what I've done, I shared with you, Chris. I was appointed as the head of HR for a renal business at a healthcare company. So, I was at the director level, so I was not inexperienced at the time. But the principle to me was it was a different business. I hadn't worked with this particular patient population before. And I talked to the general manager or president leading the business, and I had a plan. And I always have a plan when I go into new roles. How I'm going to give confidence to the business leader, I am going to learn their business. And the plan was, I am going to go out and I am going to get as close to the patient as possible. And in this case, this business model was to deliver dialysis treatment in cardboard boxes. It was administered in the home through a dialysis machine. These boxes of treatment, they weigh 20, 30 pounds a piece. You stack them in a truck in a distribution center, and the driver delivers them to different patient homes. This driver is literally bringing boxes of these solutions. This was in Chicago at the time, up into brownstones, no elevator, hand truck, up the stairs, stacking them in a pantry or the bedroom of the patient. And I told the president at the time, I want to ride with that driver, and I want to see what the patient goes through when they receive this life-sustaining treatment. Of course, the president loved it. It's like, great, So, I arrive at the distribution center dressed in, it was hot. It was t-shirt and
the undercover boss.
Yeah, I'm just ready to go. I go up to the driver, and he looks at me and he goes, "Do you want to work, or do you want to just?"
Does he know who you are, by the way? He knows that you're the
director of HR. I'm just taking over the HR director job for the business. And he was funny. He said, he was actually asking it in a comical way. He said, "Do you want to work?"
He probably meant it at the same time. It's like when you say it's a joke, but then you deep down you're like, do you actually want to work?
Yeah, he was, because he said to me, I only ask because a lot of times people go on the rise, they sit in the truck, they don't come in. And I said, no, I want to work. And I told him, I want to experience what you experience. Yeah. And he looked at me and he's, you got to be really strong to lift these hand trucks of brownstones in the downtown Chicago. And I said, no, I want to do this. So I get on the truck, we drive 45 miles into the city. I was on the North Shore of Chicago at the time. That's where the distribution center was. Go in there, bring these massive stacks of boxes up into the home of the patient. You're sitting, and then I'm stacking this, and the patients are interacting with you. they are, they want to give you water. They want to talk to you. The caregiver comes out, and you get a sense for how important it is in this interaction with the patient to, that you represent the company. The patient looks to you as a representative of this company,
Mm-hmm.
and you truly see the impact of what you're doing. You're changing people's lives. One thing I learned through that and putting the HR hat on is I remember going to different homes doing this. And, this is all day, this is 8 hours. And I'm watching the map and I'm looking at the highways, and I asked him, why are we going all the way to Indiana and then going back?
Same route.
I mean, we're doubling back. We're crossing over state lines, and it seems unproductive. And he said to me, this is a problem. I brought this up. The schedulers aren't experienced enough to understand the inefficiency of how we're doing this. This is a new system we have. And I asked him a few more questions, and I went back to the office after this was all done, this experience. And of course, the first thing I did is I looked at the organizational structure around how are we benchmarking these jobs. And you go in. At the time, I went to the centers of excellence, and I said, do you understand what these jobs do? And when you break it down, you had people leveling these jobs that didn't understand the skills that were really needed, weren't really pricing the jobs where they needed to be to get the right talent in. And we adjusted the talent strategy based on that experience. So what started out as a ride along, when everybody says they want to learn the business, if you're paying attention as an HR person, you can gain unbelievable insights in how to make the business better if you truly seek to understand the experience of the patient and how the workforce relates to that experience. It's an absolutely unbelievable power when you exercise it.
The inefficiency of the supply chain that you recognized, I'm sure was costing the company hundreds of thousands, not millions, in burn fuel costs, in the amount of deliveries you could do per day because you were going back and forth, and it was just so inefficient along the way. If you imagine a company like Amazon or any of the other companies, if they did it that way, they'll be out of business.
In addition to that, you're talking about a cultural impact. These drivers, in that case, are eyeball to eyeball with your end user, with your patients.
You need those guys. Yeah.
Fortunately, if they lose faith,
that's it,
in the ability of the company to help them do their job better, it will come out in the patient interaction, which has an implication on the corporate reputation and in the patient experience.
Yeah, they're the face of your company.
Face of the company, and it's underappreciated if you're not paying attention as HR leaders, because it's easy to attach to the most the headlines of where the business, a healthcare company is a critical capability. It has to be chemists, it has to be market access. No, you have to really think about it as an HR leader, because it's not always obvious.
Fantastic. Well, what a great story. And I know there's another one you have, which I really thought was interesting, around actually watching the surgery of it's the same different company, right? If I remember.
Same company, different role.
Oh, different role. Okay.
What I've always tried to do, I gravitate towards transformation. This is just, I love the ability to go into a role and do something different. And I would encourage, HR professionals to seek,
discomfort
that are a little uncomfortable, right? And that you're a little scared of. So this particular example was same company, but the company is very diversified. So this was a biosurgical unit that the company was developing. It was a small unit, and it's a biologic, and the company was heavily leveraged in medical devices and pharma. It had some biologics, but this particular biosurgical unit was tiny. And the idea was to grow this unit into a full-fledged franchise. And I actually entered the company in this role as the head of HR for this unit. I think the workforce was like around maybe 40 people in the US. Globally, there was a little more. But the goal was to first ramp up the US and then take other markets out. France was one of those. But I took the role over, and the plan was to add sales resources and medical resources to then correlate to an increase in top line. And it was a very good plan because the products that we had and we were launching were very strong. There was market share there. And my role as the HR head was to build the workforce plan. And the first thing we did with the launch is, of course, what you do is you look at the sell part of the strategy. Yep. And we knew we had to add, I think at the time, it was probably something like 50 sales reps. And, as an HR person, you kind of go, hey, what kind of capabilities do we need? So in order for me to determine those capabilities, just like in my prior example, and in my, frankly, examples earlier in my career, understand the experience of the end user. Now, the end user is the patient in this example. These are surgical sealants. The patient experience is somewhat hard to get, directly when someone's having an operation, but you can certainly interact with surgeons. And in this particular example, you had cardiovascular surgeons, orthopedic surgeons using this product. I had put a plan together, just like the other example I gave with the president of this business, and I explained, I am going to go, and I want to go into a surgery, and I want to go with a sales rep into the hospital, and I want to interact with the surgeon, the nursing staff, and watch and observe how the sales rep interacts with all of it. And of course, the president loves that. Okay, this is my HR person, really interested in understanding what capability is needed, but he wants to experience this. This is also in Chicago, Illinois. I go to a major institution, Rush Hospital. I meet up with the sales rep. I get credentialed in. I'm in the room gowning up with all the doctors at the hospital.
Oh
I am gowned up. I have the mask on. I walk with the sales rep and I see how he's interacting with the staff in the hospital. And I watch as he interacts with the spine surgeon for this procedure. And the spine surgeon has a relationship that goes back, according to the rep, 10 years. So they know each other, but still. Wow. It is a very almost tense exchange. This surgeon does not want to spend more than 1 minute talking to me or this sales rep.
I'm sure.
And you get a sense then for the kind of agility you need in the person that's going to be interacting with this sales rep. And we go into the operating room, and this person is very intense, the surgeon, as you would expect. There's a patient on the table. Very intense, walks up to me, remind me who you are again. I'm from the corporate office at this healthcare company. And he looks at me and he says, okay, don't touch anything. You touch anything, I have to clear the room and this patient could be injured. And you're sitting there going, wow, the intensity in this room. And the rep is doing their job in providing services to this surgeon, interacting with the nurses, interacting with other distributor sales reps standing in the surgery, providing other services outside of the company we're with to the surgeon. The surgeon is the conductor of an orchestra.
Wow.
And I'm watching the skill that this salesperson has in navigating this procedure, absolutely in awe. And I had done the same thing with pharma companies where I rode with a sales rep where they're going into offices, primary care. It's a very different interaction. Still a skill.
Yeah, exactly. You would never have known that without going there to understand that they're navigating not just their relationship with the surgeon, but also with all of the other companies that are in their providing solution, all the other people in the room. That's when I was thinking about what I would visualize that person being, you're completely blown out of the water now of what it means to be there. And the only way to truly understand it is to be in the room, right?
Well, yeah, and it's the attempt to, after it was done and you just
sure.
watching this,
yeah,
I had to go back and I had to define or help the business flesh out these capabilities. The clinical depth that they have to be able to speak to goes very deep. They have to really know how these products work, really, really, really deeply know. Then I had to build the plan because the company, we were downsizing in some other areas at this company that was widely diversified. And the natural inclination was to try to take talent from other businesses, primary care or some other non-biologics businesses, and then say, well, we're going to lay off all these people, just populate this new unit with these people. And I had to make a case not to do that. And it was actually very difficult.
Tough, I'm
I had
sure.
to do this with people who really didn't understand what I knew and what the business knew to be true. And we wound up holding the line on it. And it really, and now that business is actually one of the major full-fledged franchises at this company. I'm so proud of that. And I was there at the very beginning, and I actually feel that HR had a major impact on the creation and sustainability of that unit. I'm so proud when I look back on it. And that's 10 years ago. And I still remember it as vividly, actually over 10 years. I remember it as vividly as it happened yesterday. It is such an impactful experience. So anybody listening, if you're not out there, go out there with your business and don't just do a flyby. Get an immersive experience. Immerse in your business and understand it.
What would you say to people that are thinking, I don't have time?
I would say, if you really think about what you're there for, really think about it. For you to say you don't have time, what you're spending your time on otherwise has to be so extraordinary that you can go to your business and justify why you're not out there. And if it's not, you have to rethink your priorities. Or better yet, Chris, what I would say is go ask the person or people running the business, whether it's a CEO or a business unit head or whoever is leading your business, and ask them that question. Mm-hmm. Hey, I don't think I have the time. What do you think? And maybe, you take their cue.
Yeah. Because there's not many people that I speak to, and I spoke to hundreds of thousands, if not of your peers over the last 13 years. And not many people do what you've just said, which surprises me when they're writing job specs for particular roles based on research that they've had. But really, you could have done research on those roles, and you would have had some inkling of what it would have looked like, but nowhere near the amount of insight that you took away from actually being there, living it, breathing it, and being part of it. That's so valuable.
What I would say, Chris, is it's infectious. So HR leaders, when they practice this, the teams see it, especially HR professionals growing in their career. When they see it modeled, it ripples. And the Dave Ulriches of the world, godfather of HR, and all the practitioners out there, they'll tell you the same thing. Your HR strategy is a component of the business strategy. You have to understand the business. So the theory is actually well documented by our leading thought leaders, our practitioners, but sometimes we don't pay the right attention to it as HR professionals and leaders.
And I'm sure that by doing this has elevated your own status in the organization in terms of gaining buy-in from senior stakeholders, because it's no longer based on your opinion or this research you found. It's like, I was there. So when you had to make that decision where they're saying, we're scaling down other divisions, we've got this pool of talent, maybe we can fill some of those roles. It would have been very, very, if not impossible, for you to walk into that meeting and say, actually, no, that's not the right decision based on my research. Whereas if you was like, no, I was there in the room. These people do not have the right skills to be part of this role. Yeah, very different conversation.
The credibility you build with the business allows you the reward of pushing back, because once they realize you care about their business, when you come with not so popular of a perspective, their ears are so open, and that's truly how you influence transformation. And that, to me, has been the biggest reward. Get the credibility, because then you use it, and you actually can disagree, and not just disagree and check the box, disagree and drive change.
Yeah.
That's the biggest reward that I've received from what starts as, I have to understand this.
We were also speaking in the last conversation about understanding the challenges and needs of the CEO. Share about how you've gone about doing that over your career and making sure that you constantly stay aligned with the other senior executive team.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I always do is give the leader, whether it's CEO or it's president or general manager or head of R&D, or the leader that I'm supporting, the confidence that I understand their business, even their, the strategic connection to the broader organizational strategy. So if it's CEO and you're dealing with board, understanding what the CEO is going through in dealing with their boss, whether their boss is a
Shareholders.
player or it's the board. It's
Hmm.
giving them confidence. You want to walk in their shoes. So it takes that concept of understanding the business beyond. Understand your leader and what they're going through. So when I establish that and that connection,
How do you
then
go about doing that? Run. Is it just you one-on-one, asking them a series of questions? If so, what type of questions are you asking them?
I'm a relationship person. It has to be about the relationship. And you have to be able to make a personal connection. Frankly, this goes for, I think, any
Yeah,
leadership,
exactly.
sideways, downward, but particularly in this instance, it's just make that connection. You have to make that connection. Trust. Go out to dinner. Spend time with this person, personally understanding who they are, letting them know who you are, and establishing personal trust, credibility, and trust.
It goes both ways, though, right? Like you just said. That's part that I see a lot of the HR leaders miss. You got to shit. It's a give and take on both sides. Would you agree with that?
You have to be vulnerable. You're spot on.
Yeah.
In HR, sometimes what we do is we do become quite righteous. We are the corporate conscience, no question. We have to understand our role in corporate conscience, ethics. We can't lose that, but we also can't completely go to the extreme where we become cryptic in our communications, because we have to be humans. And oftentimes I think that's where HR sometimes goes wrong, where they lean too far. Well, I can't say that, or I can't have that conversation. I always maintain the corporate conscience and the ethical moral compass, but I'm going to let people know who I am and what I stand for. And you just have to get comfortable in that space and take some risks personally sometimes.
Not everyone's going to agree, right? My last podcast with Ericsson, she said to me, Chris, I go to work every day and I'm willing to lose my job for what I believe in. If it's the right. So don't go to your job and intentionally try and lose your job, guys. But it's like, you have to be willing. She's willing to basically, put herself on the line for what she truly believes in. And this is the right decision for the employees. And a lot of the times that means upsetting a few people along the way. But if it's what's best for the organization, she's willing to put herself out there. Do you think that way?
It took some time for me. And if I'm honest, speaking your mind when you're coming up in career, you tend to be a little tentative.
Yep.
I had a hard time earlier in my career with senior people when it came to real debate, really like it's getting heated and you're like, wow, I work for this person and should I keep going? And the freeing part for me was quite recently. It wasn't until, recent. I mean, you're talking maybe over the last 5 years where I started to realize I got some good advice from some mentors. It's, John, you have to push over the edge, and you get to the edge and you're great, but get to the place where you're actually feeling, a little in jeopardy, because that's the good stuff, and do it in public. And I became quite effective, more effective in leadership team meetings, because when you're coaching and counseling a senior person responsible for your peers and a cross-functional team as an HR head, how you interact publicly with that leader controls the dynamic of the other team members, because they're looking at you,
yep,
setting the tone, and you are the conscience. You have to publicly disagree when you do. And sometimes when you don't, you're sending a message. And that advice I got was really important. It took me from being, I think, effective to actually being transformative. And you know what? When your leader gets a little upset with you and pulls you aside and just says, hey, I don't like what you did there, that's okay. Because you know what they're going to do if they're a good leader? They're going to come back and sleep on it the next day and say, hey, you know what? And this happened to me, and this was my breakthrough. John, you need to keep doing that.
The CEOs I speak to, right, they want more people like that challenge them. But unfortunately, you have to create a culture where that's, you are open to it. And most leaders say they are, but whether they are or not is another story.
And to be honest, Chris, if they're not, you might reflect on what kind of a culture the company promotes. Yep. And if they don't want you to speak up as your HR head, you have to think about whether that's a fit for your values versus the company's values. If you can't get over that, and the confidence, there's other good advice I received. Have the confidence to know what you want and go for it.
Yeah.
And it was freeing. It was absolutely freeing.
What are some of the areas in your role that you've seen just dramatically change over the past 5 years? Obviously, HR has shifted massively from what we looked like 5 years ago to where it is now. That you've had to push yourself to grow and develop.
I could talk about two topics. It depends on how long you want to go. But I think globalization, and then I think about social media, EVP, employer brand. But on the globalization piece, for me, being in global roles for many years, but being based in the States, in the US, what I learned over the years is that you can't truly earn the global HR moniker or title without really understanding the market differences. So just like understanding the differences in business model, the depth that you have to go through to understand the nuances in the markets around the world was so important. And earlier on in my career, I underestimated that. And as I got later in my career, I realized, the only way you can understand how to deliver global HR is how to deliver local HR and bottom up, get out to the markets, talk to the people in the markets. If you're global HR head of something and you're launching a product in Asia, you have to understand the difference, just like a marketer does, or an R&D leader does.
Different demographic,
between the demographic and the workforce. Understand the cultural differences. And I think whether you're in a COE within HR or you're an HR business partner, sometimes that's undervalued. That's the first thing I would suggest someone going into a global HR role. There's a lot of responsibility goes along with being called global HR. And it doesn't mean you're the overseer of everything and only the market you're sitting in. You own every market. Understand the workforce. And I spent many years doing that. And it only took over the last 10 years to really realize how critical that was. You'll lose people. You lose people if you're sitting in Germany and you're the German-based global head of HR for R&D, but you're building a workforce in China. You need to understand the Chinese market because it's different. If you're going to build workforce and you're going to hire people and you're going to brand yourself,
all of those needs to be tailored to each market. It can't be one size fits all approach. And I'm guessing the only way to do it right is to actually get out there. There's no silver bullet to this, is there? It's literally getting there, being on the ground. There's leaders that I speak to that join organizations that all spend the entire first year on the road, visiting every single site all around the world as a global head of HR to do exactly what you've just mentioned, to understand the market before any type of change initiative is launched. And when I first started hearing those stories, I was like, wow, Chris, there's no other way to do it. But they're actually going there, meeting the face-to-face, being on the ground, understanding it. Yes, there's research. Yes, there's some insights and there's some experience, that can help you along the way. But I don't think there's no other way of doing it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. It's seductive though. You take the role. You're excited. You're working with these senior people. I'll get to it. But the clock ticks, and I've been guilty of it in prior roles where, I get working in Australia. I could just do this virtually. No, you lose credibility very quickly, and it's hard to get that back. Well, why hasn't John been here? It's been 6 months. Videos are great, but you gotta have to get out there.
That also goes for, now next time if you do step into a new role, you will communicate that to the CEO and industry team. So if this is really going to work, this is what I'm going to be doing for the next 6 to 8 months. I think that's the part where people fall, because they want to come in and have an immediate impact. But that's actually probably not the way you should go. Actually take a step back and spend some time building those relationships, building the trust, understanding different markets, the cultures, etc. Then come and present to the leadership team of, this is where I think we need to make changes based on X. And I think that's where people normally go wrong, is the other way around. It's not what everyone's like, great, I'm global head of HR. You know what that actually means? Like what you're saying. So.
Well, you build a calendar. I had a leader that I worked with who had a schedule where they would take 3 months out of a year, and that would be travel time. And they would build it around family needs, and it would be constant getting on the road, and their family would know, okay, these 3 months it's going to be in and out a lot. And they would make it a routine.
It's not for the faint-hearted, though. I think that ties in quite nicely, to be honest, in this episode, because we spoke both about, the actual individual business and the product and locally and the consumer base, but then also a global overview as well. And the common thread, which I love in this story and in this podcast with you today, is how it all started from day one in the store, and that manager recognizing in you, and it's obvious. It seems so obvious when you think about it. You are the perfect person to lead HR. You know the business. You've been there. You know it in and out. If anything, you probably know it better than the owner.
That's what he said.
Yeah, I'm sure. And same with my team. They speak to my customer all day. I'm like, our customer. Yeah, but Chris, you've been doing this for 13 years. I'm like, but you're on the phone with them every day. So I'm relying on you guys to tell me how we can better serve them and provide customer delight. And I think that is fundamental. I think this all sounds very obvious what we're talking about. But the difference is talking about it and actually taking action and doing it is a whole nother story. So I really hope everyone listening today takes away some great insight from John and some of the stories and the success he's had from it. But tomorrow, go back in the office and actually do it. Take action. And I don't think your CEO is going to complain if you go to him saying, you know what, I really want to ride along with one of our sales reps today or whatever it may be, because I really want to understand our business. If they say to you no, then you probably shouldn't be working there in that company. Then to seriously consider something else, because it'd
be shocking if a leader.
Can you imagine? No, sorry, it's not valuable. Fantastic. Well, look, John, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I'm really excited that, one, you're a member of our community. Two, that we got to make this happen as well. And I'm really excited to continuously get to know you, the organization, and learn more and get involved as much as possible. Before we wrap up, if there's sort of one parting piece of advice, what would that be? And what's the best way for our audience to get in touch with you if they have any questions or want to reach out to you?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I would say the parting words here are around intimacy and immersion, employee experience, candidate experience. We have the ability to affect it all, and we can only be as effective as we want to immerse ourselves in the business, in our culture and employees, and go to the candidate experience. We didn't talk about EVP and branding, but immerse yourself. That's the final
same approach.
Immerse yourself in everything you do, and it will pay off in the results of the business.
Fantastic. And what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I'm out there. So
you're out there.
Phone number's out there, and you can reach me via email and LinkedIn as well.
Fantastic. Well, as always, guys, for everyone listening, head over to hrdealers.com. You'll find the show notes from the episode. Everything we're talking about, we're linked there. There will also be a link to John's LinkedIn profile as well if you want to reach out to him. Apart from that, John, thank you for taking the time out to join us. And I wish you all the best until we next speak.
Thanks, Chris. Looking forward to talking soon.